everyone, welcome back to Colleen's Cozy Corner. Today we have a little bit of a close-up and we might be doing a bit of an angle change because I'm going to start my series where I'm working through the new Crochet Stitch Dictionary. So like this says, it says 440 patterns for textures, shells, bobbles, lace, cables, chevrons, edgings, granny squares, and more. I think what I'm going to do for this series is I'm just literally going to go one at a time, starting from the beginning and going through each of the different stitches. Yeah, like I said, I really just know a single crochet and a double crochet. When I did some of my past works, I did some new stitches, but I just kind of learned them for that one video and I didn't necessarily learn the skill. So I'm just gonna go through this and start learning. So we're gonna start with section 1. Section 1 is basic stitch patterns. I'm gonna include a picture up here of the stitch I'm doing, of the whole section of what stitch I'm working on. So this first section is called variations with basic stitches. So slip stitch ridges, that's what we're gonna be learning today. I don't really know what this means. It looks like it's saying we need one hook. I'm gonna have to look up this first start. It says any STCT plus one beginning chain. Gonna have to look up what that means. Oh, okay, so STCT means stitch count. So this is saying any stitch count plus one beginning chain. Okay, so that's not bad. So it's basically just saying I could stitch as many single crochets across, and then it doesn't really matter, it's not a counting pattern, and then I just need to have one single crochet going up. I guess some of the patterns have, oh yeah, I see on the next page here one of them's an odd stitch. Okay, so for this one, any stitch count plus one beginning chain. So I'm looking at the chart with the key. So it says work in rows following the chart. Work rows 1 through 4 once, then repeat 3 and 4 for a pattern. So my little chart key says the open circle is a chain. Then the colored in circle is one slip stitch into the stitch of the previous row, which is tilted toward the back. Okay. And then the closed circle with the loop going down, that means one slip stitch through the back loop of the beginning chains only. Oh, okay, I see. So we're only gonna do that different stitch first, and then all the other ones are just gonna be slip stitches. So this should be a pretty easy one because I do know how to do a slip stitch. I never really considered doing a pattern using a slip stitch just because I feel like that would take forever to build up. I just have this random skein of yarn. I just never really used it for a project. I prefer to work with lighter color yarn, especially when I'm learning something. I find it easier to see. I'll start with my slip stitch. Let me see if I could change this angle so you guys could see me better. And then I have the dictionary just right here off camera. This seems like it'll be a pretty easy pattern actually, I think. So I'm starting with my slip stitch. I'm just gonna do like 5 or 6. All right, here we go. We have a decent start. This is gonna be a better angle. So I have my chains and it says to go just in the back loop. It says one slip stitch through the back loop of the beginning chains only, which I guess that just means to go here. And for a slip stitch, you just pull through all the way. So I'm going in and pulling through. Going in and pulling through. I'm just going to do this across the whole thing. Okay, so it looks like I did all that. So it's literally just a bunch of slip stitches across. Now I need to chain 1 and turn. And I'm skipping. It does not appear that I'm skipping 1, so I'm just gonna go into the first one here. And I should just be doing a slip stitch. I don't know why I feel like this is such a big loop right here. Hold on, I'm gonna have to go down 1. Or I think that was my starting loop, that's why. I missed. Okay. Now 1. Alright, now we're starting the third row now. I'm having a hard time going into this first stitch here. It's like very tight. See, I'm like really having to push through this first stitch. I don't know if that's my tension or what. The yarn, this. Alright. So we did the first one. Yeah, I'm really having a hard time pushing through. I think this is just such a tight, because it's just a slip stitch. Like typically you do a slip stitch when you're trying to finish off a row, like when you're doing something in the round. You do a slip stitch actually at the end to secure the row back to the beginning. So this is a very, very tight. I'm almost having to like force it through. Hi everyone, this is Colleen from the future. I'm just now realizing as I'm editing that for the majority of this third row, I did single crochets instead of slip stitches. Alright, so that was the third row. Now we're gonna do one more single crochet, turn, and start this fourth row. Alright, this is feeling a little bit looser up here now on this fourth row. It is Colleen from the future again. You will be hearing from me quite often. And this row was significantly more loose and a lot easier because the row before was single crochets. And again, for this row, I also did single crochets. Unfortunately, I did mess up this project doing it the first time, but you'll see from me in a little bit that I came back and fixed my mistake. I think I'm just going to do like 1 or 2 more rows just to kind of compare to the picture in here. Oh, I feel like I did that wrong. No, okay, I didn't. I did, in fact, do that first stitch of this row wrong, same way I had been doing the past 2 rows, so it was basically just muscle memory. But you will see for these next 2 rows, I am doing the correct stitch. I am actually doing a slip stitch, unlike I had done the first 2 rows. And it's back to getting tight. It's very weird. It's almost like every time... I don't know why it's back to being tight. I didn't really do anything different. I'm like struggling again. As I have now learned, I did in fact do something a lot different, being that I did the complete wrong stitch and then switched the correct stitch, which is why for this next row it was a lot more difficult to go into. And speaking of incorrect stitches, I was actually also doing the incorrect stitch for this row as well. Yeah, this row's very tight once again. Not gonna lie, I kind of zoned out. I lost count. Let me see, is this... Yeah, that was the 5th row, so I'm going to do the 6th row now. I wonder if it's just all the odd rows are going to be very tight for some reason. I don't know why that would be the case. Don't mind all the little patterns you probably see in the yarn. The bad thing about light colored yarn is you do see any kind of like hair or crumb or anything that gets in it. Yeah, this row is much easier. That's so weird. It's like all the odd rows are very tight. I'm going to do 2 more rows after this just to kind of see if that's still tight. For this row, I did switch back to the correct stitch. Alright, so that's the 6th row. Now we're going on to a 7th row. Yeah, back to being super tight. That is so weird. All the odd rows are very, very tight to go in. I don't know why that would be the case, being that it's literally a slip stitch for every single row. I'm not really changing my tension. I'm not really changing anything about what I'm doing. It's just more difficult in these odd rows. Maybe it's just like the front versus the back of the project. At least for me, when I do like my half double or double crochets, I don't notice like a difference in the front or the back. At least when I'm doing like just a back and forth piece. When I did my tapestry, you could definitely tell which one's the back. But yeah, this is very odd. Obviously, now I know in retrospect that this was not an odd versus even row thing. The issue here was me switching between stitches on accident. I'm not gonna lie, I also feel like I'm losing a stitch. I don't know if it's maybe just because it's so tight. That's just what it appears like. All right, but I'm gonna do an 8th row. Oh, see, but now this one's feeling very tight too. Maybe on some of those rows I was just loosening my tension unconsciously. Oh, see, I did that one wrong. I did a single there. I'm glad I finally caught this single crochet on the last row, unfortunately. Yeah, wow, now this row's very tight, and this should be the 8th row, which is in the previous rows, my even ones were not so tight. As I previously mentioned, obviously now I know that this was not an odd versus even row thing, so this 8th row was more tight to go into because I actually used the correct stitch for that 7th row. All right, so there we have it with my 8th row. So this is what it looks like. So this is what we were trying to make. I don't know. I feel like it looks like it. And this is where I started to gaslight myself that these two things looked alike. Other side. I feel like this maybe looks a little bit closer to it. There you have it. I have my first little swatch. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with this. There's not much for me to do with this little teeny tiny square. You know what this kind of looks like? It kind of looks like the Cinnamon Toast Crunch guys. Like if I put a face on them, it would look like those guys. Hi everyone, this is Colleen from the future, just popping in. I did redo this swatch, as you can see here. I actually did it correctly this time. And even though I did it correctly, I still would not use this pattern again in the future. I'm going to let past Colleen take over on my opinions because those are still the same, even though I technically did it wrong the first time. Just wanted to pop in and show you guys an updated swatch. Like I said, this is very, very, very tight. Just gonna see. Yeah, you really can't see through it at all. I personally don't see any reason to use this stitch in crocheting. It's super duper tight to go into, and I don't really love the way it looks. I could really only see doing this for a project that you don't want to be able to see through, like don't want to let any light through. So like if you were maybe making a crochet eye mask, or if you were going to crochet like some actual curtains to hang, I could definitely see a stitch like this being helpful. I mean, you could see there's not much coming through. So I could definitely see it being used for that. Other than that, it's way too tight, and it takes forever to build up. Like this is 8 rows, and I feel like this is maybe like the equivalent of 2 double crochet rows. So it's gonna take forever to build up. You're gonna need a lot of yarn to use this. And it's very time consuming to try and get your hook into the stitch if you want to keep it this tight. So not worth it to me. I understand how to do it. I just personally do not see any reason to do a pattern like this. You may be able to notice I did cut the ends off. Normally when I'm working on an actual project, I weave the ends in. But because of how tight the stitches are, I just honestly did not even feel like bothering to try and weave in. I just kind of cut off if it starts unraveling, it's not the end of the world. It's just a little tiny swatch. I'm not using this for anything. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a jar or a bucket of some sort, and then maybe I'll put it on my bookshelf somewhere. And I'll just kind of keep all these little swatches, fill it up just to show my progress of what I'm learning in this book. I don't really have any other purpose for these. I'm not going to do like a blanket or a granny square blanket or anything like this out of this. Especially because as we start getting into it, like already looking ahead, I can already see one of these patterns is going to be bigger than this just from like 1 or 2 rows. So there's no way I'm going to be able to make anything by combining all of them. So I think I'll just save the little swatches, put them in a jar, just a little memory jar to remind me of all my progress I'm making on crocheting. But yeah, this is number 1 in the new Crochet Stitch Dictionary. My first new stitch. Technically it was a stitch I already knew, but I did it as a new pattern, I guess. Not my favorite, definitely one I'm never going to use again. Obviously I'll use slip stitches again, but I will definitely not be making anything out of a bunch of slip stitches. There's just no way. It's just too tight. I don't like crocheting tight, and to me this, if I made a whole project out of this, it would be more frustrating and more time consuming than it would be worth. So, not for me, but my first new thing. So thank you guys for watching, and see you next week. Bye!